Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Today I'll be showing you how to create a Halloween noof. The bonus part of this video is learning how to use the Lavinia masking sheets. The masking sheets are a low-tack adhesive back sheet that allows you to stamp directly on top, cut out your mask, and adhere it to your project so you can create layered looks. So here is the project that we're going to work on today. I'm going to show you the supplies that we're going to use. First of all, we will use the Multifarious Smooth and Supreme. The 7-inch size is the one that I start out with, and cut it down to be 1.5 inches by 4.5 inches. We will do a frame around the outside, so we will cut a piece of white cardstock that will be 6 3/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches. And then for our card base, we will be using a piece of cardstock that has been cut to 10 inches by 7 inches and then folded in half so that we have a 7 by 5 inch card. So we will also be using, like I mentioned before, the Lavinia masking sheets. So this is kind of what those look like. It's just a sheet of adhesive paper. And I will show you how that we use this. This is such a great product. I've really enjoyed using it. This one is, the masking sheets are the A4 size, and you can obviously get those at delbellosdesigns.com. For our stamps today, we're going to be using our Noof, which is the LAV725. We will be using the Witch's Hat. That one is LAV733. We will be using the Fern Branch, which is LAV578. We'll be using Cardio, the Grand Gates. This one has a very long little number on it, but it is CCSTGRA-02. And then I will be using just a random set of Halloween stamps that I have. I believe I may have got these on Amazon, but you can Google Halloween stamps and find any kind of things that you want to use. I'm going to be using the tombstone, the books, and the little potion bottle. You can use anything in your design. If you have the Lavinia Witch, she comes with a cauldron, so that would be a really neat thing to use. Use bats in the background flying through the sky. So there's many options that you can use. This just happens to be what I had on hand to use with mine. So the ink that we're going to be using today, for the black ink, I will use the VersaFine Clair Nocturne. I'll be using Distress inks for my colors. We will be using the Black Soot, Carved Pumpkin, Dusty Concord, Wilted Violet, Ground Espresso, and Hickory Smoke. I will be using blending brushes to do my background work. We will also be using a 1-inch moon mask, circle mask. I usually put a little piece of tape on the back on it so that it will stay in place when I am actually doing my blending over the top of it. We will also be using a hill mask. I happen to cut this particular one out. We will be using both sides of this mask. If you have one that you have purchased that has a positive and a negative, you can use that as well. But I just happened for this particular project use one that I cut out. For creating the clouds that kind of go across the moon, I just tore a little piece of paper as well to create that mask. We will then be putting our card together using either an adhesive tape that we running kind of a running tape, or you can use the Ultra Bond adhesive. The Ultra Bond adhesive is great because it has a very fine tip on the end, so you can get a very small little amount out at one time and do it in very precise areas. We will also be using our misting bottle for some effects with our background. And then we will be using a fine tip black pen to get in a few of our little details here. So let's get started working on our project. Now, when you're creating with layers, you really need to be sure that you have an idea of what your layout is going to be. You need to go ahead and design it out as much as you can. Here's actually a draft that I did trying to figure out how I want to do my layers. So I just took a little piece of copy paper and kind of stamped it out to get an idea. This was actually my second rendition. The first one I didn't like so much, so that's why it's a really good idea to go ahead and just plan it out a little bit. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Lavinia masking sheets, and we're going to actually stamp on our Lavinia masking sheets first. And I've actually got a little scrap piece here. So I'm going to set this aside and let's go ahead and start with that project. So what I need to do is mask out my Noof, my hat, as you can see here, and then I'm going to mask out my tombstone, my books, and my potion bottles. So I will go ahead and get those out of their packaging. And then we will begin working on stamping onto our sheet. Now the thing that, what the sheet looks like is when you get it, you're going to actually have two sides. A side that feels like just almost like masking tape, and then a slick smooth side. This is actually the backing sheet that we will peel off. So you're going to turn it to your sheet right here with so that you've got your masking, I guess you would call it the actual paper side, face up. I'm going to go ahead and use my stamping platform here. We set some of our inks aside till we need them. And then I am just going to put my sheet down quickly on my stamping platform, and I'm going to lay out my elements here. Now, these don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be stamped real dark or anything like that, because basically you're just needing to get an idea of what the stamp looks like so that you can cut around it. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and lay all of mine out all at one time onto my stamping platform. Then I'm going to take my Nocturne, VersaFine Clair Nocturne, and whoops, I didn't quite get all of my stamps stuck on there. Let me go back and grab those last two that didn't get stuck down. There we go. Whoops. Looks like my tombstone doesn't want to stick. So we'll just slide him back in, stick him down. Alright. And again, you don't have to worry about it being precise, just like what you would have on your card. You're just going to need to get enough to get an impression, so you'll know where to cut out. Alright, I think that should be good. And now I'm just going to get the impression down on my masking sheet. And I may not have gotten quite enough on my smaller pieces there, so I'll go ahead and re-ink them. And actually what I think I'm going to do, Noof is fine. He may have just a little bit more thickness than my Halloween elements there. So I'll take them off and then go ahead and make sure that these will fit in. There we go. Now we have got those. So I like to go ahead and wipe off my stamps really quickly with a baby wipe. It just helps keep them from getting too much buildup of old ink. So I'm just going to wipe those off very, very quickly. I would recommend that you do that as you're going along with your projects, so that your stamps will last just a little bit longer. As you can see, I didn't quite do that with my Noof when I got him, so I learned my lesson quickly, that it's best if you can wipe things up. That also helps to keep things from smearing when you're placing your stamps down on your cards. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and remove our masking sheet and cut the pieces out. So I will pull that off of my board. Now with Noof, I am actually going to cut so that the hairs are cut off, and same thing with the grounding there, because that's not going to matter when we are putting in our background. In fact, we want the little hairs to be looking like that they're behind the background. So I'm just going to trim closely around and not worry about the little hairs. Alright, so now I have Noof cut out. I'm going to go ahead and stop the camera and cut out the rest of my things. That way we don't have to worry about the time that it will take for you to watch me cutting that out. Okay, so as you can see now, I have cut out all of my different elements that I have stamped onto the Lavinia masking sheets. And now we can begin to go ahead and put our card together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my multifarious card that I'm going to be stamping on, and I'm going to go ahead and put it on my stamping platform. All right. Now, if you remember before, let me go ahead and get my inks out of the way so I don't knock them off the table here. All right. So, we did our little sheet here that we use to outline what we're going to do. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need to go ahead and stamp our witch's hat. So I'm going to position that where I think I would like for it to be. And I'm going to once again refer to my little layout here so I can kind of get an idea of where I positioned it before, because I really did like the way that it turned out. Alright, I think that's a good place for it. And then I'm just going to look just to make sure that when I lay my Noof down, that's about where I want it to be. And I think that looks pretty good. So now I will go ahead and stamp my witch's hat. So I'm going to start out by inking it up. And I got just a little bit of ink on my board, so I want to be sure and wipe that up. Also around the little edge of my stamp there, because you don't want it to smear on your cardstock. All right. And now I will stamp that down, making sure that I get good full contact with my card. And it looks like I missed just a slight little area there, which is one of the reasons I love using the stamping platform, is that you can always go back and pick up an area that might not have stamped as nice as you like. All right. So now that we have done that, we are going to want to do our Noof next, but this is where our masking sheets come in, because we don't want the Noof to be on top of the hat. And as you may have seen from the card, the reason that I'm doing the masking as well as to help with the layers is because I want to use my markers or color pencils to color in these areas here. I don't want my background to muddy the colors up. So that's one of the reasons, again, that we're using the masking. So I'm going to take my witch's hat that I stamped onto the masking paper, and if we can get it to peel off, we're going to peel that plastic background off, which sometimes finding the little corner is a little hard. Let's see if I can find a good place to grab that. There we go. So I'm going to peel that plastic piece off, and then I'm going to lay the one that we created on the mask over the one that I've just stamped. That way when I do the background and I do the Noof, I won't have to worry about it's stamping over on top of where an area where I don't want it to stamp. Alright, so I'm just going to press that down and make sure this is lined up. Oops, I pulled it off. Get it lined up where I want it. There we go. Press down so that it sticks to my paper. And the nice thing about this is it's a very low tack, so it will come off very easily when we're ready. Okay, so now I'm going to lay my Noof where I want him to be. I'm going to make sure that he is positioned. And I'm actually, that's what one of the great things about having these little sheets that come with your inks, with your stamps. You can kind of line it up and get an idea of really where you want that to be. All right, so now we are ready to stamp Noof. So I'll do the same thing, close the door. Make sure he's stuck down. And apply my ink on Noof. Noof is a big stamp, so I always go over it quite a few times to make sure that I got all my areas inked up on the stamp. Because it's easy to miss one when you're doing a large stamp. Again, that's one of the great things about having a stamping platform. So I'm going to make sure that the entire surface of Noof is making contact with my card. And we've got a good impression there. So we will now move on to the next set of stamps. I'm going to go ahead and cover Noof up because, again, we don't want to stamp on top of him. Remove the plastic backing. And now we have our Noof covered up. Now I'm also going to want to, and my fingers are a little bit dirty here, I'm going to wipe them very, very quickly because I don't want to get ink all over my paper. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and work on putting in our elements so that we can begin our rest of our other processes. So I'm going to take my example and take my stamps. So we've got our little Halloween elements there and place them where we want them to be. So I'm going to place that one right about there. Ink up my stamp quickly. Put it down where I want it. Now we're going to do our books. Now my books are going to hang over just a little bit, so I'm just going to take a little piece of scrap paper so I don't get anything all over my ink all over my sticky background. So let's go ahead and put our books somewhere. Oops, got them upside down. Put our books somewhere right around in there. Stamp that down. And now finally we're going to do our little potion bottle. Let's set that somewhere right in there. I'm not turning the platform around because you know that I'm just inking at the stamps and there's no point in turning it all around since you know that's what I'm doing here, right? Okay, so now we have got the rest of the elements that we're going to mask out down on our card. So we're going to go ahead and take the rest of our little pieces and mask them out. So as you look at this, you're thinking, wow, this is like looking kind of jumbly. It's going to get more jumbly before we're done, but when we do our reveal, it's going to be really neat looking. Get our books put on. And finally, our little potion bottle. All right, so now we are set up and we are ready to start working on our background. We'll go ahead and place our moon mask as well. Where you want that, I'll put that right about there. And then we will ready to begin doing our coloring for our background to get that in before we remove all of the masking and go on to the coloring and that type of thing. So let's go ahead and start on our background. To start our background, we're going to go ahead and lay down our hill mask. And let's see, I think I'm just going to put it somewhere around in here. I like to take a little bit of tape so it doesn't wiggle around and just kind of tape it down. Alright, so we've got all our masks in place. And we're going to start out with just a little bit of the carved pumpkin. I like to have just a little bit, since it's a Halloween, have a little bit of orange. So we're just going to put just a little bit of the orange in places. Not a whole lot, but I like to have a little bit of it there. Alright, then we're going to move on to the wilted violet. And with our wilted violet, we are just going to go all around, leaving a few little places where the orange might show up. And just start creating the look of a nighttime Halloween sky. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and use the Dusty Concord to give just a little bit of darker purple in our night sky. All right. I'll try and put in a few spots that are darker. right, and then the final thing I'm going to do is I want to put just a little bit more aura around my moon. So I'm going to take the Concord. I'm going to get one of my little tiny daubers here, and I'm just going to kind of go and flick around the edge of it. Just to maybe give it a little bit more of the mystery. And we can smooth it out just a little bit. And do a little blending there, but we now have that little bit of an aura around the moon. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and take my little piece of torn paper and create just a little bit of the same Dusty Concord, just a little bit of the image of some floating clouds going across our moon and sky. All right. So now that we have got the top part of our skyline done, before I remove the landscape mask, I'm going to just go ahead and spritz a little bit, grab a paper towel here, a little bit over the top of it, and I kind of want it to have some bigger drips. Let that sit for a second, and then I'm just going to dab it up so we can get some of that mysterious look of the sky there. Okay, so now we will take up our mask and we can actually even go ahead and remove this from our stamping platform, because the work that we're going to be doing does not require that we need to stamp more. So we're going to take that off. Okay, so do you remember that I had the top part and the bottom part for my mask here? They kind of lined up with each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this up at the top and tape it down as well. And that way I can begin to do the ground part of the background. So we'll put that down and that down. Maybe just a little piece of the top to keep it from wiggling too much. So now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my ground espresso, and we're going to go ahead and just do probably from the half of the books up with a little bit of the ground espresso. Let's see, grab a little. And so we're just going to go in here and put a little bit of that color down. We can let it have dark spots and light spots. Alright, and then to give just a little bit of a misty feel to it, I'm going to go ahead and use the hickory smoke. And with that, I'll just start kind of blending here closer to the bottom part of the card. And I don't mind if it goes up a little bit into the brown there, because then that just kind of creates the blend of them together. All right. And so that's basically all we're going to do right now to the background until we are ready to kind of touch up some finishing pieces. So we'll go ahead and remove our little mask here with our for our hills, and we'll now go ahead and remove all of the masking sheet. So this is kind of the magic part of it to me. So I start peeling off my little masking pieces. To reveal the areas that I didn't want my ink to be on. And remove that little piece. Okay, and so there we are. You know what? Actually, I made one little mistake, so I'm going to put my Noof back down. Because I forgot that I want to go ahead and put my gate down first before we take this off, because I don't want my gate in front of Noof. So I did forget that one step. So I'm going to put Noof back down, and I'm going to put my tombstone back down, because those two are the main areas that we're going to have to worry about. And I may go ahead and put the witch's hat on just in case it rides a little high. Sorry about that. I want to make sure that I've got my gates in there, because I think that part is really cool looking. Alright, so there's my hat down again. Okay, so I'm going to take my gate stamp, and we're going to put that down. Now, let's determine where we want that to go. Okay, I think about like that's going to be pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take one of my little pieces of paper here, because when I do my gates, I want them to kind of make sure that they line up right across the edge. So that just gives me a guideline as to where to line up the bottom of the gate when I move the stamp over. So let's put, so you can see I'm going to line up the bottom of my gate with the top of that little piece of paper that I put down as a guideline. I'm going to actually go ahead and put these back on the platform again, so that just in case I decide that the image I stamped isn't quite what I want it to be. So let me put this back down on the stamping platform, and then line up my little piece here. Let's see, I think the gate will look great there. Alright, so that allows me to restamp just in case we don't get a good crisp image. So line that up with my sheet of paper. Stick that down. Ink up my gate piece. Okay, that looks good. And then we will line the gate piece up over on the other side as well. Now, because I have my guideline sheet here, I know that I can get it pretty even just by putting the bottom of my stamp at the top edge of that piece. There won't be a whole lot showing on the other side, but we still want it to be lined up so that it looks natural. Ink up my stamp. And do our second impression over here. And now we can remove it. So we take off our witch's hat, our Noof, and our tombstone. And actually, our tombstone needed to be behind the gate. So, I didn't do that exactly the way I wanted to. Sorry about that. I got my order mixed up, which is probably a good reason, again, to be sure that you do an example when you're doing your layers. And I didn't look over back at my example when I did this part. So that was my bad. Just goes to show you that even the best laid plans don't necessarily work out at the beginning, but we can fix them that. Once we figure out what we did, we can fix it again. There we go. All right. Finally got my act together. So, like I said, we can go ahead and now take our everything off of the platform. Wipe off my stamp really quickly there. And now we are to the point where we can start doing our coloring. Now, you can use whatever you like to. You can use markers, you can use crayons. Soon Patty will be stocking the Tim Holtz crayons, or pencils, rather, color pencils, that are actually an ink. It's a very cool looking product that's getting ready to come out. I don't have those yet because they're not here yet, but I will go ahead and use markers. So I'm going to stop the camera right now to go color, because you don't need to take the whole time to watch me do all of my coloring, and then I'll come back and we'll look at the finished product. Okay, so now I have got my Noof and all of the elements colored in that I had left white from our masking technique, and so we're down to the point where we just need to add a few finishing touches. So I'm going to take my black soot and just add a few little shading elements to give it a little bit more of a reality. So I'm just going to put a little shadow down here under Noof, and a little bit here under the bottle and the books. Just to give it a little bit of that shading. And then right around the base of the fence we will put some in as well. And then at the bottom of our tombstone, inside the fence. And then I may just add a couple little dashes here and there on our background hills, just to give it a little bit more depth. Alright, so that's helped some, but we want to do our final touches with the grounding by using our fine tip pen. So we're going to go in and just add just a little bit of ground and grass around each of those little elements there. And I just kind of basically do a few little kind of squiggly lines and what look like grass sprigs. And then just add a few randomly around. And if you wanted to add some right there around your fence, we could do that as well. Looks like my pen is getting a little clogged up with the ink, so I'll just do a little scribble on the scrap paper there. Go ahead and put a few little sprigs of grass here on our background landscaping. Alright, and then that just kind of ties it in a little bit and gives it a little more of a reality effect to it. And then the final thing that I like to do is I like to put just a little bit of a frame around the edge of it. So I'm going to go ahead and take my black soot again and just grab one of my little daubers. You can use your brush too, but I like the dauber. It gives me a little more control. Just starting around the edges and just going in little circles. Just give it that little bit of a frame. Helps to pull the eye to the center, and it also gives it a little bit of that distress mystery look. All right. There we go. And now we are ready to put our card together. So once again, because my fingers are a little bit inky, just going to wipe them off with my baby wipe to make sure that I don't get any of my inky fingers all over the rest of the project. So now we're going to mount our card to the frame. I'm just going to go ahead and use the adhesive tape. It goes a little bit quicker when I'm demonstrating. But as I said, I like using that Ultra Bond adhesive. It's really good, especially when you're doing tight, small places. It's just a really good glue to use. It dries clear. Alright, let's get this centered in our frame. And stick that down. And then we will mount it onto our cardstock card base that we made and cut out. And we will line that up on our card. And there is our card. I know this video took a little bit longer because we had so many elements, but with a project like this, it is so much fun to be able to layer and create the depth and everything. And like I said, the Lavinia masking sheets are awesome. I love using these. So I hope that you had a good time watching my video tutorial today and that it helped you with knowing how to create layers using the Lavinia masking sheets. Of course, they can be used for more basic masking than in this project as well. Remember to check out the delbellosdesigns.com website for more tutorials on the design team page. Have a great day. So I have one little bonus unplanned tip here. I realized that I did not put in my fern leaves that I like to put in to give it a little bit more atmosphere. So I am going to show you how, if you do make a mistake or leave something out, that you can correct it. I'm going to put my card back down onto my stamping platform here. And then I'm actually going to take some pieces of paper and put them up here at the top and find a smaller, skinnier piece that we can put up there so that it doesn't go onto my sticky mat. I'll just actually use a little piece of my mask here. So I'm going to trim a little piece down here, put this down just a little bit lower. We'll see if this will work, or maybe we'll even use a little bit bigger piece. And then if you've already done all your work and you need to do some stamping over the top of it, take some of the Sweet Poppy low-tack tape and just cover up your edges that you don't want any of the ink to go on. So since it's just at the top, I don't have to mask off the entire part of the frame and the card there. I just need to do the parts where the stamp might go across it. Alright, and then actually, let's see. Yeah, so we've got that going there. So now I'm going to go ahead and do my stamping with my pieces of my branches that I wanted to use, that I left out on the first round. So basically we will just ink up our stamps. I'm going to do that off camera so I can do this quickly. There we go, and then just stamp that down. Have one that comes down maybe like that. And then maybe one that looks like it's coming down over the moon just a little bit. And let's put one kind of coming down a little bit further out of the corner there. And that's stamped in. And then maybe we'll do like a little second generation one just kind of there at the top a little bit. Get a little overlap effect. Alright, and then we can peel off our Sweet Poppy low-tack tape, and you can see then that protected our frame when we went back in and added the little piece that we left off. And I think that gives it just a little bit more of a fine finish.